Get your dirty hands off me. Vanessa Cole screamed as the slap echoed through the luxury shopping plaza. Heads turned instantly. Phones lifted into the air. Marcus Reed staggered backward, one hand on his cheek, the other clutching a worn paper bag filled with medicine bottles. The entire marble hallway went silent for one painful second. Then came the whispers. He was begging her. Is that her ex? Look at his clothes. Vanessa adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist and laughed coldly. You really thought you could walk up to me here, she snapped. You smell like a bus station. A few guests standing near the designer store chuckled under their breath. Marcus lowered his eyes. His old gray work jacket was stained with engine oil. His shoes were cracked from years of warehouse shifts. Behind Vanessa stood two wealthy friends holding shopping bags worth more than Marcus made in a month. One of them smirked openly. This is embarrassing, she whispered loudly. Marcus swallowed hard. Vanessa. I only came to congratulate you. Congratulate me? Vanessa barked out a laugh. You think I want blessings from a broke man? The crowd grew larger. A security guard slowly stepped closer. Marcus tightened his grip around the paper bag. Inside were pills for Uncle Jerome. The last refill he could barely afford. His voice shook. Please. I do not want trouble. I just wanted 5 minutes. Vanessa leaned closer, her eyes sharp with disgust. You had 5 years, she hissed. And you stayed poor. Another wave of laughter spread through the crowd. Marcus looked around helplessly. Nobody defended him. Nobody asked if he was okay. People trusted Vanessa because wealth always sounded louder than truth. A teenage boy nearby started recording everything. This is going viral, he muttered. Marcus took a slow breath. I never hurt you. Vanessa folded her arms. No. You embarrassed me. Every single day. She pointed toward the parking entrance where a black Rolls-Royce waited beside the curb. Do you see that car? That is my life now. Men with power. Men with money. Not men who smell like loading docks. Marcus stared at the ground. The medicine bag crumpled slightly in his trembling hand. One bottle slipped out and rolled across the polished floor. An older woman from the crowd bent down to pick it up. Her expression changed when she read the label. Cancer treatment, she whispered softly. For one brief moment, sympathy touched the crowd. Vanessa saw it immediately. And she crushed it. Do not fall for his act, she announced loudly. Marcus always knows how to make people feel sorry for him. The older woman hesitated. Then slowly handed the bottle back without another word. The tiny spark of compassion died instantly. Marcus nodded weakly. Uncle Jerome is sick, he said quietly. I am trying my best. Vanessa rolled her eyes. That is your problem. Poor people always have sad stories. The words hit harder than the slap. Marcus stood frozen while cameras pointed at his face from every angle. A security guard finally stepped forward. Sir, he said firmly, you need to leave. Marcus looked at Vanessa one last time. There was still pain in his eyes. Still hope. I loved you once, he whispered. Vanessa did not blink. And I thank God every day that I escaped you. The crowd reacted with loud gasps. Someone even clapped. Marcus slowly bent down to grab the fallen medicine bottle, but before he could stand fully, one of Vanessa's friends kicked the paper bag aside. Bottles scattered across the floor. Pills rolled between expensive shoes and marble tiles. Marcus dropped to his knees instantly. Please, he begged softly. Please do not. People stepped around him like he was invisible. Some laughed. Others kept filming. Vanessa stared down at him without emotion. This is exactly where you belong, she said coldly. Marcus picked up the bottles one by one with shaking hands. His breathing became uneven. Humiliation burned through him hotter than anger. Then something strange happened. A tall man in a dark navy suit appeared near the fountain entrance across the plaza. He was older. Serious. Expensive watch. Expensive shoes. The man stared directly at Marcus with visible shock in his eyes. Not pity. Recognition. Marcus noticed him too. For the first time, fear crossed his face. The suited man reached into his pocket quickly and dialed a number. Seconds later, Marcus's old phone vibrated inside his jacket. Vanessa frowned. "Who would even call you?" she mocked. Marcus looked at the screen. The entire color drained from his face. The contact only said, "Private line." The suited man across the plaza gave a small respectful nod. Marcus answered slowly. The voice on the other end sounded calm. Powerful. "Mr. Reed," the voice said, "the jet has landed. Everyone is waiting for you." Marcus closed his eyes for one long second while the crowd continued laughing around him. Then he quietly replied, "Tell them. I will be there tomorrow." Marcus held the phone against his ear while the laughter around him slowly faded into nervous silence. Across the marble plaza, the tall man in the navy suit kept staring at him with strange intensity. Not curiosity. Respect. Marcus noticed it immediately. That made him even more uncomfortable. "Understood," Marcus said quietly into the phone. "Tomorrow morning." He ended the call fast and shoved the old device back into his jacket pocket. Vanessa folded her arms. "What was that?" she demanded. "Another fake collector chasing rent money?" Her friends laughed again, but this time the sound felt weaker. The suited man near the fountain took one slow step forward. His eyes dropped to the silver watch partially visible beneath Marcus's sleeve. His expression tightened instantly. Marcus pulled the sleeve down fast, almost hiding it on instinct. Tiny hope flickered for one dangerous second. The man opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. "Sir," but Vanessa cut in sharply. "Security. Why is he still standing here?" The guards immediately moved closer. The moment died. Marcus lowered his eyes again. He looked exhausted now. Smaller somehow. Like life had been crushing him for years. He bent down and picked up the last medicine bottle from the floor. His fingers trembled badly. The paper bag was torn. One bottle had cracked open. Pills scattered near the polished shoes of rich strangers who stepped around them like trash. "Please be careful," Marcus whispered softly. "Those are for my uncle." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Everything with you is always sad." Outside the glass walls of the plaza, rain had started falling over downtown Atlanta. Expensive cars lined the entrance. Valets rushed through the storm holding umbrellas for wealthy guests. Marcus stood there soaked in silence while Vanessa's diamond ring sparkled under warm golden lights. The contrast hurt to watch. She belonged to champagne towers and private rooftops now. Marcus looked like he had nowhere left to go. One of Vanessa's wealthy friends leaned closer and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "How did you even date someone like that?" Vanessa smirked proudly. "I was young. I confused struggle with love." Marcus closed his eyes for a second. That line hit deeper than the slap. The suited man near the fountain still had not left. Instead, he quietly approached one of the guards and asked something under his breath while looking directly at Marcus. The guard suddenly straightened up with visible tension. Another tiny crack in the story. Another strange reaction nobody understood. Marcus noticed it too. Fear mixed with frustration inside him now. He picked up the torn bag carefully and started walking toward the exit. Vanessa called after him one last time. "Do not come near my engagement party tomorrow." Marcus stopped without turning around. I was not planning to. Good, she snapped. People like you ruin important events. Silence fell again. Marcus finally looked back at her. Rainwater dripped from his jacket sleeves onto the marble floor. You used to believe in me, he said quietly. Vanessa hardened instantly. Belief does not pay bills. That sentence followed him all the way outside. The cold rain hit hard the second the glass doors opened. Marcus walked alone down the crowded sidewalk carrying the broken medicine bag against his chest. Cars splashed dirty water onto the curb beside him. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. A few blocks away, he finally reached his old apartment building. Rusted stairs. Flickering hallway lights. The smell of leaking pipes. Upstairs, Uncle Jerome coughed violently inside the tiny room while an unpaid hospital bill sat open on the table. Marcus placed the medicine down gently and forced a tired smile. I got them, he whispered. Uncle Jerome studied Marcus's swollen cheek carefully. She did that? Marcus stayed silent. The old man shook his head slowly. One day they will regret how they treated you. Marcus looked away toward the small kitchen sink filled with overdue notices and final warnings. Regret does not help us tonight. Then his phone vibrated again. Unknown number. Marcus hesitated before answering. A calm female voice spoke carefully on the other end. Mr. Reed. Mrs. Evelyn Reed has returned to Atlanta. Marcus froze completely. Across the room, Uncle Jerome suddenly looked terrified. And in the silence that followed, the old silver watch slipped from Marcus's pocket onto the floor, revealing the engraved words, Reed Global Aviation. The silver watch spun across the floorboards before stopping beside Uncle Jerome's worn-out slippers. The engraved words caught the weak kitchen light. Reed Global Aviation. Silence filled the tiny apartment instantly. Uncle Jerome stared at the watch with fear in his tired eyes. Marcus, he whispered carefully. Why did they call now? Marcus grabbed the watch fast and shoved it back into his pocket like it was dangerous. His breathing became uneven again. I told them to stay away from me. The old man coughed violently into a thin towel stained with medicine marks. Outside, rainwater leaked through the cracked apartment window and dripped slowly into a plastic bucket near the stove. The entire room smelled like old pipes and cheap painkillers. Marcus looked exhausted. Not just tired. Broken in a quiet way. He opened the kitchen cabinet and froze. Only 2 cans of soup remained. No bread. No milk. Nothing fresh. On the small table beside the sink sat 3 unpaid hospital bills stamped final notice in red letters. Marcus slowly sat down and rubbed both hands over his face. I can handle the rent, he muttered softly. But the treatment, his voice faded. Uncle Jerome forced a weak smile. Do not waste your life trying to save mine. Marcus looked up immediately. Do not say that. I am serious. No, Marcus shook his head hard. You stayed when everybody else left. The old man went silent after that. Emotional pain hung heavy inside the tiny room. Marcus stood again and grabbed his warehouse uniform hanging near the door. The sleeves were faded white from years of hard labor. One pocket was stitched together by hand. He checked his phone quickly. 3 missed calls from the hospital. 1 voicemail from the landlord. Another final warning. Across Atlanta, the world looked completely different. Vanessa stood inside a luxury penthouse wrapped in silk while workers prepared flower arrangements for her engagement party. Crystal lights glowed across the ceiling. Expensive music played softly in the background. Damian Brooks adjusted his cufflinks while staring at a tablet screen. Something feels strange about this Marcus guy, he said coldly. Vanessa laughed dismissively. He loads cargo boxes for a living. Then why did security suddenly stop questioning him? Damian asked. Vanessa paused. Just for a second. That small hesitation did not escape Damien's eyes. Back inside the apartment, Marcus quietly counted the few dollars left in his wallet. $38. That was everything. He closed his eyes briefly before slipping the money beside Uncle Jerome's medicine. I will work an extra shift tonight. Uncle Jerome grabbed his wrist weakly. You already worked 16 hours yesterday. Marcus forced a tired smile. Bills do not care about sleep. Tiny hope appeared for one brief moment when his phone vibrated again. Unknown number. Marcus answered carefully. Hello. A calm male voice spoke softly. Mr. Reed. A package was delivered for you downstairs. Marcus frowned immediately. I did not order anything. It was marked urgent. Marcus walked downstairs slowly through the dim apartment hallway. At the front desk sat a small black envelope. No return address. Just his name written neatly across the front. Inside was a folded photograph. Marcus froze the second he saw it. The picture showed a much younger Marcus standing beside a private jet with a tall elegant woman smiling proudly beside him. Evelyn Reed. On the back of the photo were only 6 handwritten words. They never stopped looking for you. Marcus quickly looked around the empty hallway. Nobody there. Nobody watching. But upstairs, his phone suddenly rang again. This time it was the hospital. Marcus answered instantly. A nervous nurse spoke fast. Mr. Reed, your uncle's condition just got worse. If payment is not made tonight, we may have to stop the treatment plan. Marcus's face lost all color. The tiny hope disappeared instantly. He sprinted back upstairs 2 steps at a time. But as he reached the apartment door, he stopped cold. Someone was already standing inside the hallway near Uncle Jerome's room. A tall man in a navy suit. The same man from the shopping plaza. The tall man in the navy suit stood in the dim hallway like he did not belong there. His polished shoes looked wrong against the cracked floor. His gold cufflinks looked wrong under the flickering yellow light. Marcus stopped with one hand on the doorframe, still breathing hard from the hospital call. Who are you? He asked. The man did not answer right away. His eyes moved from Marcus's swollen cheek to the torn medicine bag on the table, then to the silver watch half hidden in Marcus's pocket. My name is Thomas Grant, he said quietly. I work for Evelyn Reed. Uncle Jerome sat up too fast and coughed into his towel. You should not be here. Thomas looked at him. I had to be sure. Marcus stepped in front of Uncle Jerome like a shield. He was tired. Hungry. Humiliated. But he still stood between the stranger and the only family he had left. Sure of what? Thomas reached into his coat and pulled out a folded copy of the old photograph Marcus had just received. He did not hand it over. He only looked at it, then back at Marcus. Where did you get that watch? Marcus's jaw tightened. It was my father's. Thomas went still. Not shocked. Confirmed. The room seemed to shrink around them. Rain tapped hard against the window. The hospital bill on the table fluttered under the broken fan. Uncle Jerome whispered, Marcus, let it go. But Marcus shook his head. No. People keep calling. People keep following me. And nobody tells me why. For the first time, Thomas's voice softened. Because some records were changed. Marcus blinked. What records? Before Thomas could answer, his phone vibrated. He glanced down, and his face hardened. The hospital file. Marcus stepped closer. What about it? Thomas spoke slowly. Your uncle's treatment account was flagged tonight. Someone requested access. Uncle Jerome's hands began to tremble. Who? Thomas did not say the name. He did not have to. Across the city, Inside the luxury penthouse, Vanessa paced near the glass wall while Atlanta glittered beneath her. Her engagement dress hung beside her like a trophy. Damien stood at the bar, still staring at the photo one of his men had taken at the plaza. It showed Marcus on his knees. It also showed the old watch on his wrist. Damien zoomed in. His expression changed. "Read Global Aviation," he muttered. Vanessa snapped her head toward him. "What did you say?" Damien showed her the screen. "Why does your broke ex have a Reed family watch?" Vanessa forced a laugh. "Too fast. Too loud. It is fake." Damien did not laugh. "Then why did airport security call him Mr. Reed?" Vanessa's face tightened for one brief second. Then the arrogance returned like a mask. "I do not care what they called him. He is nothing." But her fingers shook when she picked up her champagne glass. Back in the apartment, Thomas asked for permission to see the watch. Marcus hesitated, then placed it on the table. Thomas turned it over and found a tiny serial code engraved near the clasp. His eyes widened. "This was never sold," he whispered. "This belonged to the Reed family." Marcus felt the floor shift under him. "Stop talking in riddles." Thomas looked toward Uncle Jerome. "He has a right to know." Uncle Jerome's voice broke. "Not tonight. Not like this." Tiny hope entered Marcus's eyes for the first time all day. Someone was finally listening. Someone was finally asking the right questions. Then the hope broke again. Thomas opened a secure file on his phone, but the screen flashed red. "Access denied." He tried again. Same result. "The file is locked," he said. Marcus frowned. "By who?" Thomas looked grim. "Someone inside the company." At that exact moment, Marcus's phone rang again. It was the hospital nurse. Her voice shook. "Mr. Reed, I am sorry, but someone just called asking about your uncle's room number." Marcus looked at Thomas. Thomas looked at the watch. Uncle Jerome lowered his head in fear. Then Thomas stepped toward the door and said in a low voice, "Pack only what you need. Now." Before Marcus could move, another message appeared on Thomas's phone. One line. One name. "Damien Brooks has requested Marcus Reed's private file. Pack only what you need. Now." Thomas Grant's voice turned sharp the second he saw Damien Brooks' name attached to Marcus Reed's private file request. Marcus stood frozen near the apartment door. "Why would Damien want my records?" Thomas slipped the phone back into his coat immediately. "Because someone told him where to look." Uncle Jerome struggled to stand from the couch, breathing hard between coughs. "Marcus, you need to leave tonight." Marcus shook his head instantly. "I am not leaving you here." The old man grabbed his wrist weakly. "Listen to me. If they connect you to the Reed family before we know who changed those files," he could not finish the sentence. Another painful cough cut him off. Downstairs, headlights suddenly flashed through the apartment window. Black luxury SUVs rolled slowly to the curb outside the building. Marcus's face tightened. "Who is that?" Thomas moved toward the blinds carefully and looked down into the rain. Too late. 3 men in expensive coats stepped out of the vehicles. One carried a folder. Another held a phone already recording. Marcus felt his stomach drop instantly. "Damien," he whispered. Across town, Vanessa sat inside her dressing room while makeup artists prepared her for tomorrow's engagement celebration. Her phone vibrated. Damien's name appeared. "Tell me you found something," she said quickly. Damien's voice stayed cold. "Your ex has access to Reed family property." Vanessa laughed nervously. "That is impossible." "Then explain the watch." Silence. Damien continued, "If Marcus is connected to Reed Global Aviation, this becomes my problem too. Vanessa's voice hardened fast. He is manipulating you. Marcus always plays victim. But even she did not sound convinced anymore. Back at the apartment building, the men from downstairs climbed the stairs slowly while neighbors peeked through cracked doors. Whispers spread through the hallway. What did Marcus do? Are those lawyers? Maybe he stole something. The social pressure returned instantly. Nobody defended him. Nobody asked questions first. Thomas lowered his voice. Do not say anything about Evelyn Reed. Marcus frowned. I do not even know why she is looking for me. Before Thomas could answer, loud knocking exploded against the apartment door. Open up. Marcus opened it slowly. One of Damien's men stepped forward holding a document. Marcus Reed? Yes. You are being accused of attempting financial fraud involving Reed Global Aviation property. Marcus stared in disbelief. What? Another man immediately raised his phone camera closer to Marcus's face. We just need a statement, he said coldly. Did you steal the watch? The hallway filled with murmurs instantly. Neighbors leaned closer. Somebody started filming from behind a stair rail. Marcus's humiliation deepened all over again. That watch belongs to my father, he said firmly. Damien's lawyer smirked. Interesting. Because according to company records, the original owner died years ago. Marcus went silent. Thomas watched carefully from behind him. One detail did not make sense. The lawyer already knew too much. Tiny hope appeared for one brief second when an elderly neighbor suddenly spoke up. That boy works every day, she said softly. He takes care of that old man alone. The crowd hesitated slightly. But Damien's men crushed the moment instantly. The lawyer opened the folder dramatically. Inside were printed photos from the shopping plaza. Marcus on his knees. Marcus holding the watch. Marcus speaking to Thomas. Hardworking people do not hide luxury property, the lawyer announced loudly. This looks like deception. More whispers spread through the hallway. Someone muttered, maybe Vanessa was right about him. Marcus's hands trembled with anger and shame. I did not steal anything. Then explain why your file is locked under executive clearance, the lawyer snapped back. Marcus looked toward Thomas desperately. Thomas finally stepped forward. That file should not have been accessed. The lawyer's expression changed instantly. Recognition. Fear. And who exactly are you? Thomas ignored the question. Instead, he stared directly at the folder in the lawyer's hands. One page was partially exposed. Marcus noticed it too. At the top corner of the document was a faded official seal from Reed Global Aviation. Beneath it, one line stood out clearly. Subject, Marcus Elijah Reed. Marcus froze. Nobody had called him Elijah in years. Vanessa was the only person outside Uncle Jerome who even knew that middle name. Thomas slowly looked at Marcus. They are not searching for a thief anymore, he said quietly. They are searching for an heir. Silence crashed through the hallway. Even the neighbors stopped whispering. Then the lawyer quickly slammed the folder shut. Too late. Thomas had already seen the missing detail at the bottom of the page. File status, altered by executive authorization. They are searching for an heir. Thomas Grant's words crushed the hallway into silence. Marcus Reed stared at him like the world had suddenly changed languages. The neighbors stopped whispering. Even Damien's lawyer looked nervous for half a second before forcing his confidence back. That means nothing, the lawyer snapped quickly. Anybody can fake a family connection. Thomas stepped closer and pointed toward the document folder still clutched in the man's hands. Then why was his executive file altered? Nobody answered immediately. Rain hammered against the apartment windows while the hallway lights flickered overhead. Marcus could feel every pair of eyes turning toward him differently now. Not with sympathy. With suspicion. With fear. The lawyer recovered first. Marcus Reed has no legal claim to Reed Global Aviation, he announced loudly so the neighbors could hear. In fact, we believe he may have used stolen information to impersonate a member of the Reed family. Gasps spread through the hallway. Someone whispered, so he really is a scammer. Marcus looked stunned. That is not true. Then explain this. The lawyer suddenly pulled another document from the folder. An old airport access card. The picture showed a younger Marcus standing beside a private jet. Across the bottom was printed one name, M.E. Reed. Silence hit harder this time. Even Marcus looked shaken seeing it again after so many years. Thomas took the card slowly. His hands tightened. This card was issued by executive authorization only. The lawyer immediately grabbed control of the moment again. Exactly, he said sharply. Which means he illegally kept restricted company property after his access was revoked. Another wave of whispers exploded through the hallway. Phones lifted again. Cameras recording. Social pressure closing in from every direction. Marcus's humiliation deepened all over again. I never stole anything, he said quietly. My father gave me that card. The lawyer laughed coldly. Convenient story. Tiny hope appeared when an elderly neighbor pointed toward the access card carefully. Wait, she said softly. That boy in the photo, that really is Marcus. Thomas looked at her immediately. You knew him back then? The woman nodded nervously. Years ago. Before he disappeared from this neighborhood. Marcus froze. He had never told anyone about that part of his life. The hallway grew tense again. Thomas slowly turned the card over. On the back was a faded emergency contact number. His eyes widened slightly. This number still uses the original Reed Aviation code, he whispered. That changed everything. The lawyer saw it too. Panic flashed briefly across his face before disappearing behind arrogance again. Old codes do not prove inheritance. Thomas looked directly at him. No. But altered executive files do. If you are watching this story right now, comment below what you think this clue really means, and who you believe is trying hardest to hide the truth. Before anyone could speak again, Marcus's phone suddenly rang. The hospital. He answered instantly. The nurse sounded frightened. Mr. Reed, your uncle's room was accessed tonight by someone claiming to represent family legal affairs. Marcus's blood ran cold. What? They asked questions about payment records and next of kin. Thomas stepped forward immediately. Who signed in? The nurse hesitated. I only saw the last name. Brooks. Marcus looked up slowly. Damien. Across town, Damien stood inside his luxury office staring at security footage from the shopping plaza. He replayed the moment Marcus answered the mysterious phone call again and again. Then he paused the screen. The suited man near Marcus was clearly visible now. Damien's expression changed instantly. Thomas Grant, he muttered under his breath. Vanessa looked confused. Who is that? Damien turned toward her slowly. He worked directly under Evelyn Reed. Vanessa's face lost color for the first time. No, Damien stepped closer. How much did Marcus really tell you? Vanessa looked away too fast. That was answer enough. Back in the apartment hallway, Thomas finally made a decision. He placed the old access card carefully inside his coat pocket. This evidence cannot stay here. Marcus frowned immediately. That belongs to me. And that is exactly why you are no longer safe. Suddenly, another neighbor rushed upstairs holding a torn envelope. Marcus, she cried breathlessly. This was pushed under your door downstairs. Marcus opened it carefully. Inside was only one photograph. A black and white image of a hospital maternity ward from years ago. A young Evelyn Reed holding a newborn baby. On the back, written in faded ink, were 4 chilling words. Original birth record removed. Original birth record removed. The word sat heavy in Marcus Reed's shaking hands while the apartment hallway stayed completely silent. Thomas Grant slowly took the photograph and studied it again under the flickering light. The image showed Evelyn Reed holding the newborn baby close against her chest. On her wrist was the exact same silver bracelet Marcus remembered seeing once as a child before everything disappeared from his life. Thomas looked at Marcus carefully now. Not like a stranger anymore. Like someone carrying a painful memory. "You need to come with me," Thomas said quietly. Marcus stepped back immediately. "No, Marcus, every time rich people come near me, my life gets worse." The pain in his voice silenced the hallway again. Even the neighbors lowered their eyes. Thomas softened his tone. "I am not here to hurt you." Marcus laughed bitterly. That is what powerful people always say before they erase someone. Across town, Vanessa stood frozen in Damien's office while he replayed security footage from the shopping plaza again. Thomas Grant's face on the screen terrified her more than she wanted to admit. Damien noticed it instantly. "You know something," he said coldly. Vanessa crossed her arms defensively. "I know Marcus lies." Damien walked closer. "Then why are you scared?" Before she could answer, Damien's assistant entered quickly holding another document. "Sir," the assistant whispered nervously, "the original hospital archive from 28 years ago was accessed tonight." Damien's expression darkened instantly. "By who?" The assistant hesitated. "Thomas Grant." Back at the apartment, Uncle Jerome suddenly struggled to breathe again. His coughing turned violent. Marcus rushed to support him before he collapsed against the couch. "Easy," Marcus whispered desperately. "Please," Thomas immediately called the hospital from his phone. "Prepare emergency intake," he ordered calmly. Marcus looked stunned. "You would do that?" Thomas glanced toward Uncle Jerome. "No man should lose family because of hidden paperwork." That simple sentence hit Marcus harder than expected. Tiny Hope entered the room quietly for the first time. Thomas helped Marcus carry Uncle Jerome downstairs through the dim apartment building. Neighbors watched silently from cracked doors. No whispers this time. No cameras. Only uncomfortable silence. Outside, the black luxury SUV waited beneath the rain. Marcus hesitated before helping Uncle Jerome inside. The expensive leather seats. The warm lights. The driver in a suit. Everything felt like another world compared to the leaking apartment upstairs. Marcus kept his torn jacket wrapped tightly around himself anyway. He still did not trust any of it. During the drive, Thomas carefully opened the old photograph again. "This picture was taken at St. Mary's Hospital," he said quietly. Marcus frowned. "Why does that matter?" Thomas pointed toward a small symbol in the corner of the image. "That maternity wing closed after a legal investigation." Marcus stared at the photo harder now. Then his eyes widened slightly. In the background reflection of the hospital window stood a man wearing a Reed Aviation security badge. Thomas noticed Marcus's reaction instantly. "You see him too?" Marcus nodded slowly. "I remember that face." Silence filled the car after that. Emotional. Heavy. Dangerous. At the hospital entrance, nurses rushed Uncle Jerome inside while Marcus stayed frozen near the automatic doors. He looked completely exhausted now. Rain soaked through his clothes. His cheek still carried the faint red mark from Vanessa's slap. Thomas stepped beside him carefully. "Your uncle's treatment is covered tonight." Marcus looked confused. "Why?" Thomas answered honestly this time. "Because someone spent years making sure you stayed invisible." Marcus's eyes hardened again. "Then tell me the truth." Thomas opened his mouth to answer, but stopped when he noticed someone across the street watching them from inside a black sedan. Vanessa. Her face tightened the second she saw Thomas handing the old photograph back to Marcus. Panic flashed through her eyes. She immediately grabbed her phone and whispered sharply, "He still has the picture." Damien's voice came through cold and controlled. "Then get close to Marcus before Thomas does." Vanessa stared at Marcus standing alone under the hospital lights. For the first time since leaving him, she looked genuinely afraid. Inside the hospital, Uncle Jerome suddenly called out weakly from his room. "Marcus!" Marcus rushed inside immediately. The old man's trembling hand reached toward him. "There is something I never told you about the night your mother disappeared." Thomas froze near the doorway. And across the room, the old photograph slipped from Marcus's hand onto the hospital bed, landing directly beside Uncle Jerome's hidden gold necklace bearing the Reed family crest. The gold necklace bearing the Reed family crest lay against the white hospital blanket like a secret that had waited years to breathe again. Marcus Reed stared at it in shock. "Where did you get that?" Uncle Jerome's weak hand trembled beside the necklace. His breathing sounded shallow now. Painful. Thomas Grant stepped closer slowly, his expression tightening the second he recognized the crest. "That necklace belonged to Evelyn Reed," he whispered. Marcus looked between both men in confusion. Why would Uncle Jerome have it? The old man closed his eyes briefly, like the memory itself hurt too much to carry. "Because your mother gave it to me the night she disappeared." Silence swallowed the hospital room instantly. Rain tapped softly against the window while machines beeped beside the bed. Marcus felt his chest tighten. "My mother knew Evelyn Reed?" Uncle Jerome nodded weakly. "They were close once. Before the family turned against her." Thomas looked stunned. "Turned against her for what?" Uncle Jerome hesitated. Fear crossed his face immediately. Like he regretted speaking already. For having a child they wanted erased. Marcus froze completely. "What child?" The old man looked directly at him. But before he could answer, the hospital room door suddenly opened. Vanessa stepped inside carrying fake concern across her face. "Marcus," she said softly, "I heard about your uncle." Thomas immediately moved in front of the bed protectively. Vanessa noticed the photograph and necklace on the blanket instantly. Her eyes widened for half a second before she hid it again. Too late. Thomas saw the reaction. "How did you know he was here?" he asked coldly. Vanessa forced a small smile. "Atlanta is not that big." Marcus stepped back slowly. "You followed me?" "I came to help," she insisted. But nobody in the room believed her now. Uncle Jerome looked terrified the second he saw her. His voice dropped into a whisper. "She looks just like her." Vanessa frowned. "What does that mean?" Uncle Jerome shook his head quickly like he had already said too much. Thomas carefully picked up the old photograph from the bed again. He looked closer this time. Really closer. Then his face changed. "Wait." Marcus turned toward him. Thomas pointed toward the background reflection in the hospital window. There were two women in this room that night. Marcus leaned in. Behind Evelyn Reed's reflection stood another woman partially hidden by shadow. Only half her face remained visible. But around her neck hung the exact same gold necklace now resting on the hospital bed. Marcus whispered softly, "My mother." Tiny hope entered his voice for the first time. Not hope for money. Hope that his life finally made sense. Thomas slowly nodded. "Your mother was connected to the Reed family long before you were born." Vanessa's breathing became uneven. She quietly reached for her phone behind her purse. Thomas noticed immediately. "Who are you texting?" Vanessa forced a laugh. "Nobody." But the screen lit up briefly in her hand. Damien Brooks. Across town, Damien sat alone inside the dark penthouse office studying another recovered company archive. One page had finally been restored from the deleted Reed Aviation files. The top line read, "Confidential maternity transfer, St. Mary's Hospital." Damien's expression hardened as he continued reading. "No," he muttered under his breath. Back in the hospital room, Marcus slowly sat beside Uncle Jerome's bed. "Tell me the truth," he whispered. "Please." The old man's eyes filled with tears. "Your mother loved you more than anything. Then why did she leave me?" Uncle Jerome's voice broke completely. "Because somebody powerful made her disappear." The room fell silent again. Emotional. Heavy. Dangerous. Thomas immediately pulled out his phone. "I need the complete St. Mary's archive," he ordered sharply into the line. "Every deleted record from 28 years ago." Tiny hope grew stronger for one brief moment. Someone was finally searching for the truth openly. But the obstacle arrived just as fast. A nurse suddenly rushed into the room looking frightened. "Mr. Grant," she said nervously, "someone just requested emergency transfer papers for Uncle Jerome." Thomas frowned instantly. "Who authorized it?" The nurse swallowed hard. The request came directly from Reed Family Legal Affairs. Marcus stood up immediately. "What?" Thomas looked toward Vanessa slowly. Her face had gone pale. And on her phone screen, one unread message from Damien flashed brightly. "Stop them before Jerome talks." Uncle Jerome grabbed Marcus's wrist weakly one last time. His voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus, the person who destroyed your mother's life," he looked toward the hospital doorway in fear. "Still lives inside the Reed mansion. Still lives inside the Reed mansion." Uncle Jerome's trembling words hung over the hospital room like a storm waiting to break. Marcus Reed stared at him in disbelief. "Who?" he asked immediately. "Tell me who destroyed my mother's life." But before the old man could answer, alarms suddenly beeped from the heart monitor beside the bed. Nurses rushed into the room fast. "Everyone outside," one nurse ordered sharply. Marcus refused to move at first. He was about to tell me the truth. Thomas Grant pulled him back gently. "Let them help him." The hospital room doors shut in front of them. Marcus stood frozen in the hallway while rain crashed against the tall windows behind him. Vanessa watched everything silently from the far corner. Fear hid behind her perfect makeup now. She quickly texted Damien again. "He is starting to remember." Seconds later, Damien replied, "Bring him to the engagement party tomorrow. We end this there." Marcus noticed Vanessa holding her phone tightly. "Why are you still here?" he asked coldly. Vanessa forced tears into her eyes instantly. "Because I care about you." Marcus laughed bitterly. "You slapped me in public yesterday." "I was angry." "No," he said quietly. "You were ashamed." The words hit her hard. Thomas stayed silent beside them, studying every reaction carefully. He no longer trusted Vanessa at all. Across Atlanta, the Reed mansion glowed under golden lights while servants prepared for the massive engagement celebration between Vanessa and Damien. Luxury cars arrived one after another. Politicians. Investors. Influencers. Wealth surrounded everything. Inside a private office upstairs, Damien met secretly with Reed family attorney Harold Whitmore. An old legal file rested open across the desk. "If this gets out tomorrow," Damien warned, "the company collapses." Harold adjusted his glasses nervously. "The original birth records should have stayed buried." Damien slammed the file shut. "Then bury them deeper." Back at the hospital, Marcus sat alone outside Uncle Jerome's room holding the old photograph in shaking hands. He looked exhausted. Broken. Confused. Thomas sat beside him quietly. "Your mother's name was Lena," Thomas said softly. Marcus looked up immediately. You knew her? Thomas hesitated. Only briefly. But I remember one thing clearly. What? Thomas stared at the photograph again. She kept saying someone inside the mansion wanted her child gone forever. Silence filled the hallway. Emotional. Heavy. Marcus swallowed hard. Why would anyone hate a child? Thomas answered honestly. Money. Inheritance. Fear. Tiny hope flickered when Marcus finally asked the question he had avoided for years. Do you think my mother was telling the truth? Thomas looked directly at him. I think somebody spent 28 years trying to erase you. For one brief second, Marcus no longer felt crazy. No longer felt alone. But the obstacle arrived immediately. A hospital administrator suddenly approached holding paperwork. Mr. Reed, she said carefully, there is an issue with your uncle's insurance authorization. Marcus stood up fast. What issue? The account was frozen tonight under legal review. Thomas's expression darkened instantly. Damien again. Marcus closed his eyes in frustration. They are trying to stop his treatment. They are trying to pressure you, Thomas corrected quietly. At that exact moment, Vanessa stepped closer with fake concern painted across her face. Marcus. Damien wants to help. Thomas turned sharply toward her. Help? Vanessa nodded quickly. He can restore the hospital coverage. Marcus looked suspicious immediately. What does he want? Vanessa hesitated. Just long enough. He wants you to attend the engagement party tomorrow night. Thomas's eyes narrowed. Why? Vanessa forced another weak smile. To clear misunderstandings publicly. But nobody believed that lie. Even Marcus could feel the trap hiding underneath her words. Still. Uncle Jerome needed treatment. The hospital bills were growing by the hour. Marcus lowered his head slowly. If I come, my uncle keeps his care. Vanessa nodded. Yes. Thomas stepped closer immediately. Do not trust this. Marcus looked toward Uncle Jerome's hospital room. Machines beeped softly behind the door. His voice cracked quietly. I do not have a choice anymore. Across the hallway, a young janitor pushing cleaning supplies suddenly stopped when he noticed the old photograph in Marcus's hands. His eyes widened instantly. Wait, he whispered nervously. I know that woman. Marcus turned sharply. What did you say? The janitor looked terrified now. She came here years ago, the night somebody stole a newborn's hospital file. Before Marcus could ask another question, 2 hospital security guards suddenly appeared at the end of the hallway. Sir, one called out loudly while pointing toward the janitor, you need to come with us immediately. The janitor's face turned pale. And just before the guards grabbed him, he looked directly at Marcus and whispered, your mother was betrayed by someone wearing the Reed family ring. Your mother was betrayed by someone wearing the Reed family ring. The janitor's terrified whisper echoed through Marcus Reed's mind long after hospital security dragged the man away. Marcus tried to follow, but Thomas Grant stopped him gently. Not here, he warned quietly. Too many eyes are watching now. Marcus looked exhausted. Angry. Lost. Everybody knows pieces of my life except me. Thomas did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked down at the old photograph, the gold necklace, and the growing list of hidden records connected to Marcus's name. The truth was getting dangerously close. And somebody inside the Reed family clearly knew it. The next evening, the Reed mansion blazed with luxury. Crystal chandeliers glowed above hundreds of wealthy guests gathered for Vanessa Cole and Damian Brooks' engagement celebration. Black luxury cars lined the enormous driveway. Cameras flashed. Champagne flowed across silver trays. The richest families in Atlanta filled the ballroom wearing diamonds and designer suits. At the center of it all stood Vanessa in a sparkling white gown, smiling for cameras like nothing was wrong. But beneath the smile, fear lived in her eyes. She kept checking the ballroom entrance every few seconds. Waiting for Marcus. Damien noticed. "Relax," he whispered coldly beside her. "Tonight ends this." Across the ballroom, a giant projector screen waited beside the stage. Most guests assumed it was for engagement photos. Only Damien knew it was prepared for something else. Near the back entrance, Marcus finally arrived wearing his old dark suit from years ago. The sleeves no longer fit properly. Rain stains still marked the cuffs. He looked painfully out of place among the wealthy crowd. Conversations immediately slowed around him. Rich guests whispered behind champagne glasses. "That is him. Vanessa's ex. He looks homeless." Marcus kept walking anyway. Quiet dignity. Silent pain. Thomas stayed close beside him, carrying a sealed leather folder under one arm. Security guards moved toward Marcus instantly, but Thomas raised one calm hand. "He stays." The guards stepped back immediately. That small moment changed the energy in the room. People noticed. Vanessa noticed most of all. Her smile nearly disappeared. "Why did you come?" she hissed when Marcus reached the ballroom floor. Marcus looked directly at her. "You promised Uncle Jerome's treatment would continue." Damien stepped forward smoothly before Vanessa could answer. "And it will," he said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "As long as honesty stays in this room tonight." The sentence sounded polite. But it was a threat. Marcus understood immediately. Thomas did too. Emotional tension spread through the ballroom like smoke. Nearby guests slowly gathered closer, sensing drama. Cameras turned toward Marcus again. Vanessa lifted her chin proudly, trying to regain control. "Marcus has always struggled with boundaries," she announced with fake sadness. "I tried to help him move on peacefully." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Marcus lowered his eyes briefly. The humiliation returned again. Public. Sharp. Familiar. Then Thomas interrupted calmly. "Interesting." The entire ballroom quieted slightly. Thomas looked directly at Damien. "Because the hospital records suggest someone has worked very hard to erase Marcus Reed from history." Silence hit the room instantly. Damien smiled coldly. "Careful with accusations." Thomas did not blink. "Careful with altered files." Tiny hope flickered through Marcus's chest when several guests exchanged uncertain looks for the first time. Doubt had entered the room. Vanessa saw it happening and quickly grabbed the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said loudly, forcing a laugh, "please do not let conspiracy stories ruin tonight." The crowd laughed nervously with her. Social pressure returned instantly. Wealth always controlled the room faster than truth. Marcus took a slow breath. "I never asked for any of this." Vanessa snapped back immediately. "Then why do you keep showing up?" The question hurt more than she realized. Marcus looked around the glittering ballroom. The chandeliers. The diamonds. The expensive suits. Everything reminded him how small he had been made to feel his entire life. But before he could answer, the ballroom doors suddenly opened again. Every head turned. An elderly woman entered slowly wearing black silk gloves and carrying a silver cane. Evelyn Reed. The room fell completely silent. Vanessa's face lost all color. Damien straightened instantly. Thomas lowered his head respectfully. Marcus stood frozen. Evelyn's eyes locked onto him the second she entered. Not on Vanessa. Not on Damien. On Marcus. She walked forward slowly through the silent crowd until she reached the center of the ballroom. Then she looked at Thomas and asked one calm question. "Did you bring the final file?" Thomas tightened his grip around the sealed leather folder. Damien's confidence cracked for the first time. Vanessa's hands began trembling around the microphone. And across the giant projector screen behind them, the first frozen image suddenly appeared, a hospital maternity room from 28 years ago. The giant projector screen flickered above the ballroom as the frozen hospital image filled the wall behind Vanessa Cole and Damian Brooks. Every conversation died instantly. Crystal glasses lowered slowly. Phones stopped recording for the first time all night. Evelyn Reed stood motionless near the center stage, her eyes locked on Marcus Reed with quiet pain. Thomas Grant stepped forward carrying the sealed leather folder carefully in both hands. Damian forced a smile. "This has gone far enough," he announced loudly. "Tonight is supposed to celebrate family." Evelyn turned toward him slowly. "Exactly," she said coldly. Silence spread across the ballroom. The projector suddenly changed images. A scanned hospital document appeared on screen. St. Mary's Hospital. Maternity ward transfer record. Several sections were blacked out. Others had been altered. Gasps moved through the crowd. Thomas opened the folder and removed the original copy. "This document was hidden for 28 years, he said calmly. And illegally modified by executive authorization." Damian stepped forward immediately. "Forgery." Thomas ignored him and continued. The original maternity file listed one newborn male transferred under emergency protection. Another page appeared on the screen. A handwritten note signed by a nurse. "Child temporarily removed from Reed family records." The ballroom went completely silent. Marcus stared at the screen without breathing. Vanessa's hands trembled around the microphone. Damian's jaw tightened. "This proves nothing," he snapped. Evelyn finally spoke again. Her voice low. "Controlled. Dangerous. Then perhaps this will." Thomas revealed the old airport access card beside the silver watch and gold necklace. 3 objects. 3 pieces of one hidden life. "These items belong to only one branch of the Reed family," Evelyn said quietly. "My sons." The crowd reacted instantly. Shock. Confusion. Whispering. Phones lifted again. Marcus looked frozen in place. "No," he whispered softly. Evelyn stepped closer to him. Her eyes filled with tears she had held back for decades. "Your mother Lena disappeared the night she discovered someone inside this family planned to erase you from our records forever." Vanessa stumbled backward slightly. Damian grabbed her arm hard enough to stop her from moving. "Stay calm," he hissed under his breath. But panic had already reached both of them. Then the screen changed again. Security footage from St. Mary's Hospital. Grainy black and white video. A woman holding a newborn baby rushed through a hallway while looking terrified. Lena. Marcus's mother. Another figure followed close behind wearing a Reed family ring clearly visible under the hallway light. The ballroom gasped again. Marcus's eyes widened slowly. He recognized the ring immediately. Damian saw it too. "Turn that off," he barked loudly. Nobody moved. Thomas continued calmly. The hospital footage was partially deleted 28 years ago. Another frame appeared. The woman chasing Lena stopped briefly beneath the camera. Her face became visible for the first time. The room exploded into whispers. Vanessa's mother. Nicole Hayes dropped the microphone from shock. Vanessa looked physically sick now. "No, no," she whispered. Evelyn's voice cut through the ballroom sharply. "Your mother worked inside this mansion when Lena lived here." Vanessa's knees nearly gave out. Damian tried one final time to regain control. "This is emotional manipulation," he shouted toward the guests. "There is no proof Marcus Reed belongs to this family." Thomas calmly removed one last paper from the folder. The original birth certificate. Untouched. Unedited. He handed it directly to Evelyn. She read the full name aloud into the silent ballroom. Marcus Elijah Reed. Public silence crashed over the entire mansion. Rich guests stared openly now. No more whispers. No more laughter. Marcus trembled slightly where he stood. Not from fear anymore. From finally being seen. Evelyn looked directly at the crowd. This young man was stolen from his own name. Vanessa suddenly broke. I did not know, she cried out desperately. But before anyone could respond, Thomas revealed the final document. A private message recovered from deleted Reed legal archives. Sent only 3 days earlier. From Damian Brooks. Keep Marcus Reed away from the engagement until the files are destroyed. The entire ballroom turned toward Damian instantly. His face drained of color. Evelyn slowly asked the question nobody in the room could escape anymore. If Marcus was nothing, why were you so afraid of the truth? If Marcus was nothing, why were you so afraid of the truth? Evelyn Reed's question shattered the ballroom into complete silence. Damian Brooks stood frozen beneath the chandelier lights while hundreds of wealthy guests stared directly at him. No more whispers. No more laughter. Only judgment now. Vanessa Cole slowly backed away from Damian like she suddenly realized the ground beneath her was collapsing too. Damian forced one final smile. This proves nothing illegal, he said sharply. Old hospital files do not change reality. Thomas Grant stepped forward calmly. No. But deleting a child from family records does. Gasps spread through the ballroom again. Marcus Reed stood motionless near the center of the room, still holding the silver watch that once felt worthless in his rough hands. Yesterday people laughed at him for wearing it. Tonight it had become proof of stolen identity. Evelyn looked at Marcus with visible pain in her eyes. Your mother begged this family to protect you, she said softly. Instead, she was forced to disappear. Vanessa shook her head desperately. I did not know any of this. But the projector screen changed again before anyone could respond. Another recovered message appeared. Private note, Vanessa Cole requested security remove Marcus Reed from public events. The ballroom reacted instantly. Phones lowered. Several guests looked openly disgusted now. Vanessa's lips trembled. That was not about this, she whispered weakly. Marcus finally looked at her fully for the first time all night. His voice stayed calm. Quiet. Hurt. You knew they were trying to erase me. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I was scared. No, Marcus answered softly. You were ashamed of me. The words cut deeper than any scream could. Public shame rolled across the ballroom now. People who once laughed with Vanessa slowly stepped away from her side. Damian noticed immediately. His perfect image was cracking in real time. He turned toward Evelyn quickly. You cannot destroy my reputation over emotional stories. Evelyn did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Your reputation destroyed itself the moment you chose greed over truth. Silence crashed over the room again. Thomas opened the final section of the leather folder carefully. Inside rested the original Reed Inheritance Amendment. Untouched. Signed decades ago. He handed it directly to Evelyn. She read the final line aloud. In the absence of my direct heir, all controlling shares remain frozen until Marcus Elijah Reed is found. The ballroom exploded into shock. Damian's face completely lost color. Vanessa covered her mouth in horror. Marcus looked genuinely overwhelmed now. Not excited. Not triumphant. Just emotionally crushed by how much had been stolen from him. Uncle Jerome's words echoed in his mind. Somebody powerful made her disappear. Then came the final moral blow. Evelyn stepped directly toward Marcus in front of the entire crowd. Slowly, she placed the gold Reed family necklace into his hands. This belonged to your mother, she said quietly. And this family failed both of you. Marcus's hands trembled around the necklace. Public dignity finally returned to him in the same kind of room where he had once been humiliated and erased. Across the ballroom, Nicole Hayes lowered her head in shame. Guests who mocked Marcus hours earlier now avoided eye contact completely. Even the security guard stepped aside respectfully. Damien made one desperate move toward the stage microphone. "This situation is still under legal review," he announced loudly. "Nobody should jump to conclusions." Thomas immediately responded. "Then perhaps you should explain why your office ordered hospital archive destruction 3 days ago." Another document appeared on screen. Damien's electronic authorization code. Final proof. The room turned against him instantly. Vanessa whispered weakly, "Damien, tell me that is not real." Damien said nothing. That silence answered everything. Evelyn raised her voice one final time. "This engagement is over." The sentence echoed through the mansion like judgment itself. Vanessa's knees nearly gave out. Damien stood completely alone now while cameras captured every second of his collapse. Marcus did not smile. Did not celebrate. He simply stood there breathing hard while years of humiliation slowly lifted from his shoulders. Then Evelyn carefully reached into the leather folder one last time and removed a small sealed envelope. She placed it gently into Marcus's hands. "Your mother left this for you," she whispered. Marcus stared at the faded handwriting across the front of the envelope. "For my son, when he finally comes home. For my son, when he finally comes home." Marcus Reed stared at the faded handwriting on the envelope while the grand ballroom around him slowly disappeared into silence. The chandeliers still glowed above the shattered engagement party. Wealth still surrounded the room. But for the first time in his life, Marcus no longer felt invisible inside it. Evelyn Reed gently touched his shoulder. "Open it," she whispered softly. Marcus's hands trembled as he unfolded the old letter. The paper was worn from time. Some words had faded. But his mother's voice still lived inside every line. "My sweet Marcus, if you are reading this, it means the truth survived longer than the lies." Tears filled Marcus's eyes instantly. Across the ballroom, nobody spoke anymore. Even the cameras lowered out of respect. "They may take our home," the letter continued, "but they will never take your name. One day you will walk back into the light, not as a servant to powerful people, but as my son." Marcus covered his mouth for a second, overwhelmed by emotion. Uncle Jerome's words. The necklace. The watch. The erased records. Every painful piece of his life finally connected together. Evelyn quietly wiped tears from her own eyes. "Your mother never stopped fighting for you." Behind them, Damien Brooks stood abandoned near the stage while lawyers quietly approached him with legal papers. His business partners had already stepped away. Vanessa sat alone in silence, mascara running down her face while guests avoided looking at her directly. Their power had disappeared faster than they imagined possible. But Marcus did not look at either of them anymore. That chapter of pain no longer owned him. A few days later, morning sunlight poured across the gardens outside the Reed mansion. The same mansion that once hid his existence now stood open before him. Workers restored old family portraits inside the halls. One empty frame near the staircase now carried a small silver plaque. Marcus Elijah Reed. Evelyn walked beside him slowly through the quiet home. "You do not need to decide everything today," she said gently. Marcus looked around carefully. "This place still feels like it belongs to strangers." Evelyn nodded sadly. "Then let us change that together." Downstairs, laughter suddenly echoed from the dining room. Marcus froze for a second before stepping inside. Uncle Jerome sat comfortably near the window drinking tea while nurses checked his recovery reports. Real treatment. Real care. No more overdue bills. The old man smiled the second he saw Marcus. "Look at you," he whispered proudly. Marcus laughed softly through tears. You stayed alive long enough to say that. Uncle Jerome pointed toward the silver watch resting on Marcus's wrist. Your father would be proud too. Emotional peace slowly filled the room. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just safe. Later that afternoon, Marcus returned quietly to the old apartment building one final time. Same cracked stairs. Same flickering lights. Same narrow hallway where people once whispered about him like he was worthless. But this time the neighbors looked at him differently. Not because of money. Because they finally knew the truth. The elderly woman who defended him before smiled warmly. You kept your dignity, she said softly. Marcus nodded. That was the only thing nobody could steal. Before leaving, he placed the old photograph of his mother, the gold necklace, and the hospital letter inside a wooden memory box. Not hidden anymore. Honored. Protected. Weeks later, Reed Global Aviation announced a new foundation in Lena Reed's name dedicated to helping working families pay emergency medical bills. Marcus personally signed the first donation check while remembering every night he almost lost Uncle Jerome because he was poor. Reporters crowded around him afterward. One asked carefully, after everything that happened, what do you want people to learn from your story? Marcus looked down at the silver watch once mocked by strangers in a shopping plaza. Then he answered quietly. Do not laugh at people because they are struggling. Silence filled the room again. Peaceful this time. Marcus continued, some people carry pain you cannot see. Some people carry truths the world tried to bury. But the truth always finds its way back into the light. Outside the building, a private jet waited beneath the golden sunset sky. The same kind of jet people once thought a man like Marcus could never touch. Evelyn stood near the entrance smiling proudly while Uncle Jerome waved from a wheelchair beside her. Marcus took one last look toward the city that once humiliated him in public, then calmly walked toward his family, his name, and the new life that had finally become his.